The cold, artificial light of the Galactic Council's waiting chamber cast long shadows across Commander Lori Winter's face as she stood perfectly still, her military posture betraying nothing of the turmoil within. The chamber itself was a testament to the diversity of the Council. Walls of living crystal from the Zirian homeworlds, gravity-defying furniture designed for species with anatomies humans could barely comprehend, and atmospheric generators creating dozens of microenvironments for delegates who breathed everything from methane to liquid nitrogen. For all its inclusive design, Lori had never felt welcome here. She adjusted the collar of her Earth Force uniform, the navy blue and silver standing out starkly against the iridescent surroundings. Each medal and commendation on her chest represented human ingenuity, courage, and sacrifice, qualities the Council had systematically undervalued since humanity's admission 50 years ago. 3 minutes, Commander, said Ambassador Paul Gregory, his voice steady despite the weight of what they were about to do. His diplomatic uniform, adorned with the Earth insignia and the diminutive Galactic Council emblem, would soon be a historical relic. Gregory was clutching a document case containing what the media was already calling the Severance Declaration. Its contents were simple, yet revolutionary. Humanity was withdrawing from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. "Any last-minute intelligence I should be aware of?" Lori asked, her eyes scanning the entrance to the Council chamber. "Security is heightened," Gregory replied. "The Zerilians have positioned their honor guard at triple strength. They suspect something, but they don't know what." Lori nodded. The Zerilians, crystalline beings with telepathic abilities and a rigid social hierarchy, had been the most vocal opponents of human autonomy within the Council. Their High Speaker, a towering entity of translucent purple crystal, named Zerelian Prime, had personally blocked 17 human proposals in the last cycle alone. "And our exit strategy? The Eclipse is positioned 3 light minutes out, with jammers ready to block any Council trackers. We'll have a narrow window once the declaration is filed." Lori allowed herself a thin smile. "Then we'd better make it count." Behind them, the human delegation, 20 representatives from Earth's unified government, sat in nervous silence. Each had been briefed on the unprecedented nature of what they were about to witness. In the 3,000-year history of the Galactic Council, no species had ever voluntarily withdrawn. There were species that had been expelled, others that had gone extinct, but none that had simply walked away. The vast doors to the Council chamber began to part, revealing the mammoth amphitheater beyond. Thousands of beings from across the known galaxy sat in concentric rings around a central platform. The architecture was designed to intimidate, with the speaking floor positioned at the lowest point, surrounded by rising tiers of delegates who would literally look down upon whoever addressed them. "It's time," Gregory said, straightening his shoulders. Lori nodded. "For Earth." "For all of us," Gregory corrected gently. Together, they led the human delegation into the Council chamber, their footsteps echoing in the sudden hush that fell over the assembled representatives. The murmur of thousands of translator devices created a background hum as species communicated across biological and technological barriers. At the center of the chamber stood a raised dais with an ancient artifact, the heart of governance, a luminescent cube of unknown origin that had been the symbol of Council authority since its founding. Legend held that it contained the collective wisdom of the first Council races. Now long extinct, in practice, it served as the repository for all Council legislation and treaties. Ambassador Gregory approached the dais with measured steps, the document case now open in his hands. Inside lay a single data crystal, pulsing with a soft blue light, Earth's formal declaration of withdrawal. The Council Secretary, a gaseous entity contained within an ornate environmental suit, floated forward. "The Council recognizes Earth's delegation," it announced, its voice translated into thousands of languages simultaneously. "Ambassador Paul Gregory may approach the heart." This was the moment. Lori watched as Gregory placed the data crystal into a receptacle at the base of the heart of governance. Immediately, the crystal's glow intensified, and holographic text began to stream from it into the air above the dais. A ripple of shock passed through the assembly as the first lines became visible to all. In accordance with Article 997, subsection 12 of the Founding Charter, the Severance Clause, humanity hereby formally withdraws from all treaties, agreements, and obligations binding Earth to the Galactic Council, effective immediately. The chamber erupted in chaos. The Severance Clause was a theoretical provision, included in the original charter, but never intended to be invoked. It existed as a philosophical concession to the concept of sovereign will, but in 3 millennia, no species had dared to use it. Until now. Xerelian High Speaker rose from the crystalline throne in the highest tier, its voice cutting through the tumult like shattered glass. "This is outrageous! The Severance Clause requires a 12-cycle notification period. This immediate withdrawal is a violation of—" "With respect, High Speaker," Gregory interrupted, his voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics. The notification period was waived by Council Resolution 55291, which granted emergency powers to all founding and admitted species during the Proxima Centauri crisis. That resolution was never rescinded. The chamber fell silent as the Council's legal AIs processed this claim. After several tense seconds, the heart of governance pulsed with confirmation. Gregory was right. Lori watched as the realization spread across the chamber. Humanity had found a loophole, and they had executed it perfectly. The Council Secretary's containment suit rippled with distress. "The heart confirms the validity of Earth's declaration. By the Founding Charter, we must recognize this withdrawal." Xerelian High Speaker's crystalline form began to glow with anger, emitting dangerous radiation that caused nearby delegates to activate protective shields. "This is not the end. Humans," the High Speaker hissed. "You may leave our council, but you cannot leave our galaxy. You will find that existence outside our protection is precarious." Gregory bowed slightly. "We are prepared to face those precariosities. High Speaker, humanity thanks the Council for its past guidance, but we will now chart our own course among the stars." With that, he stepped back from the dais. The data crystal, having delivered its message, ejected from the heart and returned to Gregory's hand, now bearing the indelible mark of Council processing, making it an irrefutable historical document. Lori gave the signal, and the human delegation turned as one, walking with dignity toward the exit. Council security forces, massive, armored beings from high-gravity worlds, moved to form a corridor, their posture neither threatening nor supportive. As they reached the threshold of the chamber, Lori allowed herself one glance back. The heart of governance, for the first time in recorded history, had dimmed slightly. A perfect symbol, she thought, of the power humanity was taking back. The door sealed behind them with a resonant thud that felt like the closing of an era. "Commence exit protocol," Lori said into her communicator once they were safely in the transit corridor. "All personnel to evac points. Diplomatic immunity expires in 30 minutes. Around them, the massive space station that housed the Galactic Council began to subtly change. Environmental settings optimized for human comfort started to revert to alien standards. Translation services ceased. Directional indicators that had been visible to human eyes faded from view. The message was clear. They were no longer welcome. As they hurried toward the docking bay where their shuttle waited, Lori's communicator chimed with an incoming message from Earth. "Commander," came the voice of President Jason Hill. "The declaration has been confirmed. How did the Council react?" "About as expected. Mr. President. Shock, anger, threats. The Xerelians are particularly displeased. And our people. Moving to extraction points now. We should have everyone off station within the hour." There was a pause, and Lori could almost see the President weighing his next words. Commander, I need to know, did we do the right thing? Lori thought of the countless human innovations that had been suppressed by Council regulations. The colonies denied expansion rights. The trade routes restricted to maintain the dominance of elder species. She thought of the patronizing guidance offered by races that considered humanity barely more evolved than the tools they used. Yes, Mr. President, we did the right thing. They never saw us as equals. Now they'll have to. Let's hope so, Commander, for all our sakes. The communication ended as they reached the docking bay. Their shuttle, sleek, black, and distinctly human in design, waited with engines humming. Around them, other human diplomatic vessels were already beginning to depart, creating a stream of ships, leaving the massive council station. As Lori boarded with Gregory and the delegation, she couldn't shake the feeling that this exodus was both an end and a beginning. Humanity had just taken its destiny back into its own hands. Little did she know that the galaxy's hands were about to be forced as well. 3 weeks after humanity's dramatic exit from the Galactic Council, Alan Bennett found himself in what had once been the Council's trade negotiation chamber on Earth. Now, it was being hastily repurposed as the headquarters for the new Human Independence Transition Authority. The cavernous room, with its vaulted ceilings designed to accommodate delegates up to 15 feet tall, now contained rows of hastily assembled human workstations. The elegant alien art pieces had been replaced with tactical displays, showing the status of human interest throughout the galaxy. Alan rubbed his tired eyes as he studied the latest reports. As Earth's former deputy trade representative to the Council, and now the emergency economic czar, the task of disentangling humanity's economy from the galactic network fell squarely on his shoulders. "The numbers aren't improving, are they?" asked Olivia Carter, sliding into the seat beside him. As the former chief xenolinguist for the diplomatic corps, she'd been reassigned to monitor and interpret Council communications regarding humanity. "It's worse than we projected," Alan admitted, gesturing to the scrolling data. "The Xerelians have embargoed all human goods. The Proxians are demanding early repayment of development loans, and the Ardak Collective has revoked our access to the primary galactic trade routes." Olivia winced. "They're trying to strangle us economically before we can establish independence." "They're succeeding," Alan said grimly. "We've lost access to 97 key resources that can't be sourced from Earth or our colonies. Medical supplies are already being rationed on the outer settlements." A notification flashed across his screen. Another Council species, the methane-breathing Vrul, had just canceled all technology licensing agreements with human entities. "How bad will it get?" Olivia asked quietly. Alan's response was interrupted by the arrival of Kate Murphy, the former director of Xenoscientific Research and now head of Earth's Technological Independence Initiative. Her normally immaculate lab coat was wrinkled, suggesting she hadn't changed in days. "Bad, but not insurmountable," Kate said. Having overheard the question, she tossed a datapad onto the table. "We've been reverse engineering Council tech for decades, against regulations. Of course. My team estimates we can achieve 60% replacement of critical imports within 6 months." "And the other 40%? Alan asked. Kate's expression hardened. "We get creative, or we learn to live without." The conversation was interrupted by a commotion at the entrance to the chamber. Commander Lori Winters strode in, flanked by Security Chief Daniel Ford and a squad of Earth Force Marines. Their presence immediately hushed the bustling activity. "Status report," Lori demanded without preamble. "Alan, Olivia," and Kate exchanged glances before Alan spoke. "The economic isolation is proceeding faster than anticipated. We're looking at critical shortages within weeks, not months." Lori nodded as if this confirmed her expectations. "And communications?" "Degrading," Olivia reported. "The Council has revoked our access to the FTL communication network. We're limited to light-speed comms, except where we've managed to salvage or appropriate Council relay technology." which means our colonies in the Centauri and Tau Ceti systems are effectively on their own, Daniel added. His security perspective always focused on vulnerabilities. Lori absorbed this information with a grim expression. Then we're proceeding as planned. Operation Self-Reliance is now active. She gestured, and a Marine activated a holographic display in the center of the room. It showed a three-dimensional map of local space, with Earth at the center and a sphere extending outward to encompass humanity's nearest colonies and outposts. As of 0600 hours, Earth Force has commenced the securing of all human territories within this defensive perimeter, Lori explained. Any Council assets or personnel remaining within these boundaries have been placed under temporary protective custody. Alan's eyes widened. You're interning Council citizens? That's a direct violation of treaties we are no longer bound by. Lori cut him off. They're being treated humanely, but we cannot risk espionage or sabotage at this critical juncture. Before Alan could object further, another officer hurried into the chamber and whispered urgently in Lori's ear. Her expression shifted from determination to concern. "Put it on the main display," she ordered. The holographic map was replaced by a live feed from what appeared to be a human military vessel. Lieutenant Maria Rodriguez, a rising star in Earth's tactical command, saluted from the screen. "Commander Winters, we've detected unusual activity at the edge of the Kuiper Belt. Multiple Council vessels have taken up position just outside our defensive perimeter." "Hostile formation?" Lori asked. "Negative. They appear to be in a standard blockade pattern. No weapons hot, but they're definitely sending a message." Daniel Ford stepped forward. "A quarantine. They're isolating us from the rest of the galaxy." Lori's jaw tightened. "Lieutenant Rodriguez, maintain your position, but do not engage. Monitor their movements and report any changes immediately." "Yes, Commander. There's something else you should know." Rodriguez looked uncomfortable. "We've been analyzing their communications protocols, and we've discovered irregularities." "Explain." "The Council ships are using outdated encryption. Their formation is textbook, too textbook, as if they're following protocols without adaptive thinking. And their response times to our probe maneuvers have been delayed." Lori exchanged a significant look with Daniel. "You think their command structure is compromised?" "I think," Rodriguez said carefully, "that without humanity's input, the Council's military efficiency has decreased dramatically. Their coordination appears to be suffering." For the first time since entering the chamber, Lori smiled slightly. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Continue monitoring and report hourly." As the communication ended, Kate leaned forward. "This confirms my theory. The Council has been relying on human innovation more than they've admitted. Our departure has created operational gaps they're struggling to fill." "Which gives us leverage," Olivia noted, her diplomatic mind already calculating the implications. "It gives us time," Lori corrected. "But not much. The Council will adapt. We need to strengthen our position before they do." She turned to address the entire chamber. "From this moment forward, we operate on the assumption that the Council will eventually move from blockade to active hostility. All resources are to be directed towards self-sufficiency and defense. We walked away from their table. Now we need to build our own." As the meeting dispersed, Alan lingered behind, studying the display that now showed the positions of Council ships surrounding human space. The blockade was still forming, with gaps and inconsistencies, evidence of the Council's disarray without human tactical input. He was still staring at the display when he felt a presence beside him. Admiral Nelson, the grizzled veteran who commanded Earth's modest fleet, had approached silently. "Quite a predicament we've gotten ourselves into," the Admiral observed, his voice gravelly from years of commanding starships. "Was there truly no other option?" Alan asked, not bothering to hide his concern. Admiral Nelson considered this for a moment. The Council was founded on principles of cooperation and mutual advancement. Over the millennia, it became about control and preservation of the status quo. The elder races feared change, and humanity is nothing if not change incarnate. He gestured toward the display. Look closely at their formation. See the gaps in their coverage? The inconsistent patrol patterns? Their ships are more advanced than ours in almost every way, yet they're performing like cadets. Alan studied the display more carefully. You're right, they're predictable. Exactly. The Council races have relied on established protocols for so long that they've forgotten how to improvise. Humanity's greatest strength has always been adaptation. Maybe this separation needed to happen, for their sake as much as ours. With that cryptic observation, the Admiral walked away, leaving Alan to ponder whether humanity's most reckless act might also prove to be its most prescient. In the dimly lit Situation Room beneath the White House, President Jason Hill stared at the reports spread across the oval table. Each document contained worse news than the last: shortages, unrest, diplomatic rebukes from previously neutral powers. 6 weeks into humanity's self-imposed exile from the Galactic Council, and the consequences were mounting. The Luna colony is down to 30 days of atmospheric processors, announced Vice President Melanie Ward, sliding another grim report across the table. Mars reports similar shortages in their agricultural sectors. And the Council's response to our request for humanitarian exceptions to the blockade? The President asked, though he already knew the answer. Denied, Melanie said flatly. The Xerilian High Speaker personally rejected it, stating that the consequences of severance must be fully experienced. President Hill's fist came down hard on the table. They're using our people as leverage. Yes, sir. But there's something else. Melanie hesitated, then continued. Our intelligence suggests the Council itself is struggling. Reports of supply chain disruptions, communication failures, even military coordination issues are spreading throughout Council space. The President raised an eyebrow. They're feeling our absence more acutely than anticipated? It appears so. Humanity may have been a junior partner in the Council, but our innovation and adaptability filled crucial gaps in their systems. Without us, those gaps are widening. Before the President could respond, a secure communication alert sounded. The large screen at the end of the room activated, revealing Commander Lori Winters. She was on the bridge of the Eclipse, Earth's flagship, currently positioned at the edge of the defensive perimeter. Mr. President, she began, her expression grave. We have a situation developing at the Pluto monitoring station. I'm patching through Dr. Samantha Powell. The screen split to reveal a woman in a laboratory environment. Dr. Powell was Earth's leading xenobiologist and had been stationed at the remote Pluto facility to monitor for potential biological threats from beyond the solar system. Dr. Powell, what are we looking at? The President asked. Something unprecedented. Mr. President. Her voice was tense but controlled. Approximately 3 hours ago, our deep space arrays detected an anomaly at the heliopause, the boundary where our solar wind meets interstellar space. She transmitted data to the Situation Room displays. At first, we thought it was an instrument malfunction. The readings suggested a massive object, or multiple objects, moving through subspace toward our system. But they weren't using any known FTL method. It's hard to explain. They were moving through the void between spaces. Are we talking about a Council attack? The President asked, alarmed. No, sir. These aren't Council ships. They're not registering on any known spectrum. They're essentially dark, except for the distortion they create in the fabric of space-time. We're calling them Void Heralds, for lack of a better term. Commander Winters rejoined the conversation. Whatever they are, they're not responding to hails on any frequency. And they're moving fast. They'll reach Neptune's orbit within hours. The President turned to his military advisors. Options? The Secretary of Defense looked grim. Our forces are spread thin, maintaining the defensive perimeter against the Council blockade. If this is a new threat, we're vulnerable. And if we redirect forces to meet these void heralds, we risk the Council interpreting it as aggressive repositioning, added the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Dr. Powell interrupted, her voice urgent. There's more, Mr. President. The void heralds are emitting a signal, not communication as we understand it, but a kind of data corruption field. Our systems near Pluto are already experiencing failures. It's as if these entities are intrinsically hostile to our technology. The implications were clear. If these entities could disrupt technology at a distance, Earth's defenses, already stretched thin, might be useless against them. President Hill made a decision. Commander Winters, maintain your position but prepare for rapid redeployment. Dr. Powell, continue monitoring and develop countermeasures if possible. He turned to Vice President Ward. Melanie, I need options for reaching out to the Council. Whatever these void heralds are, they're a threat to the entire system, possibly the galaxy. The Council has refused all communication attempts since the blockade began, she reminded him. Then we find another way. The stakes have changed. Humanity may have left the Council, but we're still part of this galaxy. As the meeting continued, none of them realized that across the vast expanse of space, within the majestic chambers of the Galactic Council itself, alarms were already sounding. The Galactic Council's emergency session had been underway for what felt like eternity. Xerelian High Speaker's crystalline form pulsed with angry light as reports continued to stream in from the outer territories. 3 more outposts have gone silent, announced the Vril representative, methane bubbling anxiously in its containment suit. That brings the total to 17 Council facilities affected by these entities. And still no response to communication attempts? Asked the Arcturian delegate, its massive form shifting nervously. None, confirmed the Council's Chief of Security, a cybernetically enhanced being from the Rigel system. The entities appear to be immune to our scanning technology. They exist partially in subspace, making conventional detection nearly impossible. Xerelian High Speaker's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. What of our defensive fleet? The security chief hesitated before responding. The 7th Armada engaged the entities near the Proxima system. The results were concerning. Our weapons had minimal effect, more troubling. Our ships experienced catastrophic system failures when in close proximity to the entities. How many vessels lost? Demanded the High Speaker. All of them, Excellency. 5,000 crew members, gone. A horrified murmur swept through the chamber. The Council's 7th Armada had been one of its most powerful fighting forces, equipped with technology developed over thousands of years. These Void Heralds, as some are calling them, continued the security chief, appear to generate a field that corrupts advanced technology. The more sophisticated the system, the more vulnerable it seems to be. The Xerelian High Speaker's crystalline structure vibrated with fury. This is unprecedented. In 3,000 years, the Council has never encountered a threat it could not analyze, communicate with, or if necessary, destroy. There is one other matter, Excellency, the security chief said hesitantly. Our analysis suggests the Void Heralds are following a specific trajectory. Toward what destination? Based on their current course, Earth. The chamber erupted in discussion. The implications were clear. Whatever these entities were, they seemed drawn to human space. Perhaps, suggested the Arcturian delegate, this is an opportunity. If these entities neutralize the human threat. Fool! The High Speaker's interruption was accompanied by a pulse of radiation that caused nearby delegates to activate protective shields. If these Void Heralds can devastate our most advanced fleet, what do you think will happen when they encounter human technology? And if they destroy humanity, do you think they will simply depart our galaxy? The chamber fell silent as the delegates processed this reasoning. The humans, continued the High Speaker, its tone modulating to something almost resembling respect. possess a technological adaptability we have often dismissed. Their systems, while less advanced, are remarkably resilient and diverse. If anyone might develop a defense against these entities, it would be them. "Are you suggesting we warn them?" asked the Vril representative, its methane environment rippling with shock. "I am suggesting," the High Speaker said carefully, "that the survival of the Council may depend on the very species we have quarantined." A new voice entered the conversation, the ancient librarian of the Council, a being so old that few remembered its original species. It rarely spoke in Council proceedings, preferring to observe and record. "There is precedent," the librarian intoned, its voice carrying the weight of millennia. "In the early days of the Council, before most of your species achieved spaceflight, we faced a similar threat, entities we called the Unravelers. They too corrupted technology, though in a different manner." The chamber was utterly silent now, all attention focused on the librarian. The Council of that era survived only by allying with a young, adaptable species, whose technological approach was fundamentally different from the Council standard. That species later became founding members, though they are now extinct. "How did they defeat these Unravelers?" asked the security chief. "The records are incomplete, but they developed a method to disrupt the subspace field the entities utilized. It required a technological flexibility the Council races lacked." The Zarelian High Speaker was silent for a long moment, its crystalline form shifting through spectrums of light as it processed this information. Finally, it spoke. "Open a channel to the human leadership, Priority Alpha." The Council Secretary's containment suit rippled with surprise. "Excellency, the quarantine protocols. Override them, now!" As the Council scrambled to establish communication with Earth, light years away, the Void Heralds continued their inexorable approach toward human space, leaving a trail of disabled ships and silent outposts in their wake. Lieutenant Maria Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of the EFS Intrepid, watching as the strange, shimmering distortion grew larger against the backdrop of stars. The Void Herald, if that's what it truly was, defied conventional description. It wasn't so much a ship as a ripple in reality, a place where the normal rules of physics seemed to bend and warp. "Anything on scans?" she asked the sensor officer without taking her eyes off the phenomenon. "Negative, Lieutenant. It's as if our instruments slide right off it. We're getting some radiation readings, but they don't match any known pattern." Maria frowned. The Intrepid had been dispatched to Neptune's orbit as an advanced scout after the Pluto monitoring station went dark. Now, they were face to face with something that shouldn't exist. "How long until it reaches Earth's orbit at current velocity?" The navigation officer consulted his displays. "Approximately 72 hours, ma'am, but it's accelerating gradually." Maria made a decision. "Prep a probe, minimal electronics, maximum shielding. Let's see if we can get a closer look without frying our systems." As her crew hurried to comply, Maria's communication panel chimed with an incoming transmission from the Eclipse. "Lieutenant Rodriguez." Commander Winter's face appeared on the screen, her expression tense. "Status report." "Commander, we've made visual contact with the lead entity. It's unlike anything in our records, not solid matter as we understand it. More like a distortion in space-time that's somehow coherent. Can you engage?" Maria hesitated. "Unknown, Commander. We're about to launch a probe for closer analysis, but based on the reports from the Pluto station before it went dark, conventional weapons may be ineffective." Lori's expression grew more troubled. "We've received new intelligence. The Council has broken their communication blackout to warn us that these Void Heralds have already destroyed one of their armadas. Apparently, the more advanced the technology, the more vulnerable it is to their influence." This caught Maria's full attention. "The Council warned us, voluntarily?" "Yes. It seems these entities have the Council genuinely frightened. They've proposed a temporary alliance to address the threat. Maria processed this information, her tactical mind already calculating implications. If Council technology is more vulnerable than ours. Exactly, Lori nodded. Our relative technological simplicity might be an advantage. The Council ships use unified systems with quantum entanglement processors. Our vessels have more discrete systems, redundancies, even some analog backups. So when these void heralds emit their disruption field, our ships might lose some functions but remain operational, while Council vessels suffer complete failure. Lori finished the thought. It's a theory we need to test carefully. Maria glanced at the shimmering distortion outside the viewport. We're about to launch a probe. I'll transmit all data immediately. Proceed, but maintain safe distance. If you detect any system degradation, withdraw immediately. We can't afford to lose the Intrepid. As the communication ended, Maria turned back to her crew. Launch the probe on my mark, and prepare for emergency FTL jump, just in case. The probe, a simple, hardened device with minimal electronics, detached from the Intrepid and moved slowly toward the Void Herald. Data began streaming back immediately, though much of it made little sense. The entity appears to be generating a field that it's hard to describe, reported the science officer. It's like it's introducing errors into any digital system it encounters. Not random errors, structured ones, almost like a competing code. Some kind of technological virus, Maria suggested. More fundamental than that. It's as if these entities exist partially in information space itself. They don't attack our systems so much as rewrite the underlying reality those systems operate in. The probe continued its approach, transmitting increasingly garbled data as it neared the entity. Suddenly, all transmissions ceased. Probe lost, Lieutenant, announced the sensor officer. Last telemetry showed all systems simultaneously failing at approximately 500 kilometers from the entity's apparent boundary. Maria nodded grimly. That gives us our safety perimeter. Maintain position at 1,000 kilometers and continue passive observation. As the Intrepid held its position, observing the alien phenomenon from a distance, Maria couldn't shake the feeling that they were being observed in return. There was an intelligence behind this threat, not biological perhaps, but purposeful. And it was heading straight for Earth. In what had once been the Council Embassy in Geneva, now repurposed as Earth's Emergency Response Center, an unprecedented meeting was taking place. On one side of the conference table sat President Hill, Vice President Ward, Commander Winters, and several key human leaders. On the other side, visible only as holograms due to the ongoing blockade, were Zarelian High Speaker and representatives from the Council's leadership. The atmosphere was tense, years of distrust and recent hostilities creating an almost tangible barrier between the two parties. Let me be absolutely clear, President Hill began, his voice steady. While we appreciate the warning about these void heralds, humanity will not consider rejoining the Council under duress. The Zarelian High Speaker's crystalline form shimmered with what might have been irritation. That is not our proposal, President Hill. The Council seeks a temporary alliance of necessity. These entities threaten all sentient life in the galaxy. Commander Winters leaned forward. Our intelligence suggests that Council vessels are particularly vulnerable to the Herald's disruption field. Is this accurate? There was a pause before the High Speaker responded. Yes. The unified quantum systems that power our civilization appear to be susceptible to corruption by these entities. Early encounters have been devastating. Yet you maintain the blockade around our space, Vice President Ward noted, with an edge to her voice. Limiting our ability to prepare defenses. The blockade will be lifted immediately, the High Speaker declared, surprising the human delegation. All Council ships are being redirected to create a defensive perimeter at the outer boundary of your system. President Hill exchanged glances with his advisors. This was an unexpected concession. And what does the Council expect in return? Your innovation, President Hill. The human capacity for technological improvisation that we have often undervalued. The admission seemed to cause the High Speaker physical discomfort. Our analysts believe your more diverse and redundant systems may be more resistant to the Herald's influence. You need us to develop a weapon, Commander Winters stated flatly. We need you to develop a defense, corrected the High Speaker. One that both our civilizations can implement before it's too late. Dr. Samantha Powell, who had been observing silently, spoke up. I've been analyzing the data from our encounters with the Void Heralds. They seem to generate a field that introduces errors into the base code of any technology they encounter. The more standardized and optimized the system, the more catastrophic the failure. Which explains why Council ships are more vulnerable, nodded Kate Murphy. Their systems are perfectly optimized, with minimal redundancy or variation. Our technology is messier, more diverse. We use different operating systems, hardware configurations, even competing standards within the same ships. Inefficient, noted the Council's chief scientist, speaking for the first time. Resilient, Kate countered. When one system fails, we have backups that operate on different principles. President Hill considered this information. Dr. Powell, how long until these Void Heralds reach Earth? At their current acceleration, less than 48 hours. We've detected 5 distinct entities on approach vectors, with more potentially following. And if they reach Earth? Dr. Powell's expression was grim. Based on what we've observed, every digital system would fail. Power grids, life support, defense networks, all corrupted. And that's assuming the Heralds don't have more direct methods of attack we haven't yet observed. The room fell silent as both human and Council representatives contemplated this apocalyptic scenario. Finally, President Hill spoke. We'll cooperate, but on our terms. First, the Council formally recognizes humanity's independent status. Second, all technology restrictions previously imposed on Earth are permanently lifted. Third, our colonies receive immediate humanitarian aid to address the shortages caused by your blockade. The Zarellian High Speaker's crystalline structure vibrated with what might have been indignation. You would extort concessions while the galaxy faces extinction. I would ensure that if humanity helps save the galaxy, we do so as equals, not as subordinates. President Hill replied firmly. A tense silence followed. The Council representatives conferred in their own language, a series of crystalline tones and light patterns incomprehensible to human senses. Finally, the High Speaker spoke again. Your terms are accepted. The Council recognizes the sovereign status of humanity. Technology restrictions are lifted. Aid will be dispatched to your colonies immediately. Commander Winters couldn't hide her surprise. The Council was not known for conceding points in negotiation, especially not so quickly. They must be truly desperate, she whispered to Vice President Ward. Or truly frightened, Ward replied softly. President Hill stood, bringing the meeting to its formal conclusion. Then we have an alliance. Let's get to work. As the Council holograms faded, the human leadership remained in the room, processing what had just occurred. Can we trust them? Asked Daniel Ford, his security training making him naturally suspicious. At this moment, yes, Commander Winters replied. Self-preservation is a powerful motivator. Once the crisis passes, that's another matter. President Hill turned to Dr. Powell and Kate Murphy. You two are our best hope for developing a defense against these Void Heralds. Whatever resources you need, they're yours. We'll need to coordinate with Council scientists, Kate pointed out. Their understanding of subspace mechanics exceeds ours. Make it happen, the President nodded. And Commander Winters, prepare our fleet. If science fails us, we'll need a military option, however desperate. As the meeting dispersed, Commander Winters found herself momentarily alone with President Hill. The weight of responsibility was visible in his posture. "When we left the council," he said quietly, "I never imagined we'd be facing a threat like this so soon. No one could have predicted it, Mr. President. Yet, here we are. The fate of Earth, perhaps the galaxy, in our hands." He smiled wryly. "Independence comes with its own burdens." "Yes, sir," Lori agreed. "But it also comes with the freedom to face those burdens in our own way. The Council would have followed their protocols, their established doctrines, even as they failed. And we'll do what humanity has always done. Mr. President, we'll adapt, we'll innovate, and somehow, we'll survive." As Lori departed to prepare Earth's defenses, she couldn't help but wonder if the president's confidence was justified. The Void Heralds were unlike anything humanity had encountered, a threat not just to their bodies or their worlds, but to the very foundation of their technological civilization. Time was running out, and the darkness between the stars was drawing ever closer. Kate Murphy hadn't slept in 36 hours. The makeshift research facility beneath Geneva hummed with frantic activity as human scientists worked alongside holographic projections of their council counterparts. The unlikely collaboration had already yielded valuable insights, though a definitive defense against the Void Heralds remained elusive. "The problem," Kate explained to Commander Winters during a brief status update, "is that these entities exist partially in what the Council calls information space, a substrate of reality where data and energy are interchangeable." "Like subspace?" Lori asked, trying to grasp the alien concept. "More fundamental. Subspace is still physical, just operating under different laws. Information space is where the laws themselves are encoded." Kate gestured to a complex holographic model. "The Void Heralds don't just disrupt our technology. They rewrite the underlying rules it operates on." Lori frowned. "How do you defend against something like that?" "That's where we might have an advantage. Human technology evolved along thousands of different paths, using different coding languages, operating systems, even fundamental computing paradigms. We never standardized the way the Council did. And that helps us how?" Kate's eyes lit up with the enthusiasm of scientific discovery. "We're developing what we're calling a chaotic defense matrix. Instead of trying to shield our systems from corruption, we're making them intentionally unpredictable, constantly shifting protocols, random code migrations, deliberate inefficiencies that make it impossible for the Heralds to establish a pattern to corrupt." "Will it work?" "In theory. We've simulated it against the corruption patterns we've observed. But we won't know for sure until—" She was interrupted by an urgent alert. Dr. Powell's face appeared on the nearest screen. "The Void Heralds have accelerated," she reported, her voice tense. "They'll reach Mars orbit within 3 hours." Commander Winters straightened. "That's ahead of schedule. How many?" 5 confirmed entities. Commander. And they've changed their configuration. They're no longer traveling in a linear formation. They're spreading out, surrounding the inner system. They're adapting, Kate realized. They've recognized our defensive posture and are adjusting their approach. Lori's expression hardened. "Which means they're intelligent, not just destructive." "Dr. Powell, what's the status of the Mars defense grid?" "We've implemented the preliminary version of the chaotic defense matrix, but it's untested. The colonists have been evacuated to the deep shelters. But if the grid fails, the life support systems will follow." Lori finished grimly. "Understood. Keep me updated." As the communication ended, Lori turned back to Kate. "How soon can we deploy the full defense matrix?" 24 hours, minimum. We're still coordinating with Council technicians to adapt it to their systems. Mars doesn't have 24 hours. Deploy what you have now, and pray it's enough." Kate nodded, already turning to issue the necessary orders. As Lori left the research facility, her communicator chimed with a priority message from Earth Force Command. "Commander," came Admiral Nelson's voice, "the Council fleet has taken position alongside our defensive line. Awaiting your orders. Maintain formation, Admiral. The Void Heralds will reach Mars orbit soon. That will be our first test. And if the defenses fail? Lori hesitated before answering. Then we'll learn what we can from that failure and adjust. That's the human way. Indeed it is, Commander. Nelson out. As the communication ended, Lori boarded a shuttle to take her to the Eclipse, which now orbited Earth as the command center for the joint Human Council defense effort. From there, she would witness humanity's first true stand as an independent galactic power, for better or worse. The shuttle ascended through Earth's atmosphere, and Lori caught a glimpse of the planet below, blue, vibrant, teeming with life. Everything humanity had achieved, everything they hoped to become, depended on the next few hours. She only hoped they were ready. Mars hung in the viewport of the Eclipse's bridge, its rust-red surface appearing deceptively peaceful. In orbit around the planet, a joint force of human and council vessels maintained a defensive perimeter, weapons charged and systems on high alert. Commander Winters stood at the tactical display, where 5 distinct anomalies were visible approaching the red planet. The Void Heralds had slowed their advance, moving with an almost cautious deliberation that suggested intelligence and purpose. Time to intercept? She asked. 17 minutes. Commander, reported the tactical officer. The Heralds will reach our outer defensive line at 0947 hours. Lori nodded, her expression betraying none of the tension she felt. Around her, the bridge crew worked with focused efficiency, coordinating with both human and council vessels. Despite years of distrust, the two forces had integrated their command structures with remarkable speed, necessity proving a powerful motivator. Status of the Mars defense grid? She asked. Operating at 97% capacity. Commander, the chaotic defense matrix is active but still being optimized. On a secondary display, Lori could see the constant flux of the new defense system. Unlike traditional military networks with stable protocols and predictable command structures, this new system deliberately introduced randomness and redundancy. Systems shut down and rerouted without warning. Authentication protocols shifted every few seconds. Even the underlying code was constantly being rewritten by AIs programmed to be unpredictable. It was messy, inefficient, and utterly unlike the elegant solutions the Council favored. It was also, potentially, their only hope. The Council flagship is hailing us, Commander, announced the communications officer. On screen, the bridge display shifted to show the interior of the Council vessel, Eternal Vigilance. The Zarelian high speaker's crystalline form dominated the image, its facets glinting with nervous energy. Commander Winters, the alien leader began, its translated voice carrying a hint of strain. Our analysis suggests the defense matrix you've implemented has only a 63% chance of success. That's 63% better than what we had before. High speaker, Lori replied evenly. Nevertheless, we recommend a more aggressive posture. Our remaining armada could launch a preemptive strike. And based on previous encounters, your ships would be disabled before they could inflict significant damage. Lori interrupted. The defense matrix is our best option. If it works on Mars, we can refine it for Earth and beyond. The high speaker's crystalline body vibrated with what might have been frustration. You place too much faith in an untested system, Commander. And you place too little faith in adaptive solutions. High speaker, that's why we're in this position to begin with. Before the alien leader could respond, an alert sounded across both bridges. The Void Heralds have accelerated, reported Lori's tactical officer. New intercept time, 3 minutes. All ships, battle stations, Lori ordered. Maintain defensive formation but do not engage unless directly threatened. Our priority is to observe how the defense matrix performs. The Zarelian high speaker's image flickered as if uncertain, then steadied. We will comply with your strategy, Commander. May it prove successful. As the communication ended, Lori turned her attention back to the tactical display. The 5 void heralds were now clearly visible, their rippling distortion fields warping the very fabric of space around them. They moved with eerie coordination, spreading out to approach Mars from different vectors. 1 minute to contact with the outer defense grid, announced the tactical officer. Lori opened a channel to Kate Murphy and Dr. Powell at the research facility on Earth. The heralds are about to engage the Mars defenses. Stand by for data. We're monitoring, Kate confirmed. All sensors are focused on the interaction. The bridge fell silent as the countdown continued. 30 seconds. 20. 10. Contact, reported the tactical officer. The lead herald has entered the outer defense grid perimeter. For several agonizing seconds, nothing seemed to happen. Then, gradually, instruments began to detect subtle changes. The herald is emitting its disruption field, reported the science officer. Defense grid systems are registering corruption attempts. But holding. The chaotic matrix is working. It's preventing the herald from establishing a consistent attack pattern. A cautious optimism spread through the bridge. On the display, the lead void herald seemed to hesitate, its approach slowing as it encountered unexpected resistance. The other heralds are adjusting their approach, noted the tactical officer. They're coordinating, focusing their disruption fields on a single sector of the defense grid. Lori frowned. They're adapting, relay to Mars control, shift matrix parameters, maximum randomization. The order was acknowledged, and the defense grid's already chaotic operations became even more unpredictable. Systems that had been operating normally suddenly shut down, while dormant backups activated using entirely different protocols. For a moment, it seemed to work. The Void Heralds again paused, apparently confused by the shifting defense. Then, without warning, all 5 entities synchronized their disruption fields, creating a combined pattern of corruption far more complex than anything they had previously demonstrated. Alarms blared across the bridge. "Multiple failures in the Mars defense grid," shouted the tactical officer. "Sectors 3 through 17 are experiencing cascading corruption." "Emergency protocols," Lori ordered. "Activate the isolated backup systems." On Mars, hardened bunkers housed completely isolated computer systems. Technology deliberately kept separate from the main grid and designed to activate only in case of catastrophic failure. These systems began to come online, attempting to restore critical functions. But the Void Heralds were already adjusting again, their disruption fields shifting to target the new systems as they appeared. "It's not working." Kate's voice came through the communication channel, tension evident. "They're learning too quickly. The chaotic matrix needs more time to evolve countermeasures." Lori made a swift decision. "All vessels, offensive pattern Delta. Target the space between the heralds with electromagnetic pulse weapons. Don't aim for the entities themselves. Aim for the space they're communicating through." It was a desperate gambit, based on the theory that the heralds must be coordinating their attacks through some form of information exchange. If that exchange could be disrupted, even temporarily. The human and council ships moved with surprising coordination, their weapons firing not at the Void Heralds, but at the apparently empty space between them. Massive electromagnetic pulses, gravitic distortions, and experimental subspace disruptors created a chaotic web of interference. For a critical moment, the synchronized attack of the heralds faltered. Their perfectly coordinated disruption fields became discordant, working against each other rather than in harmony. "It's working!" exclaimed the tactical officer. "The Mars defense grid is stabilizing. Corruption rates are declining." Lori didn't allow herself to relax. "Maintain interference pattern. Dr. Powell. Kate, what are we seeing?" "The heralds appear to communicate through quantum entanglement," Dr. Powell explained rapidly. "Your interference is preventing them from maintaining synchronized attacks. But it won't last. They're already developing countermeasures." "How long do we have?" "Minutes at most. But it's given us critical data. We know they can be disrupted." The tactical display confirmed Powell's assessment. The Void Heralds were already adapting, their disruption fields shifting to new frequencies that could penetrate the interference. "They're resuming their approach to Mars," reported the tactical officer. "Defense grid corruption is increasing again." Lori made another rapid decision. "All ships, fall back to secondary defense line. Mars control, initiate protocol blackout." Protocol blackout was the last resort for defending the Mars colony, a complete shutdown of all but the most essential life support systems. Run on isolated primitive computers using technology so basic that it predated quantum processing. It would leave the colonists in darkness, with minimal life support, but it might keep them alive. As the joint fleet retreated to a safer distance, the Void Heralds surrounded Mars, their disruption fields enveloping the planet. The defense grid failed completely, as did most of the colony's infrastructure. Only the hardened, primitive systems deep in the emergency bunkers continued to function, maintaining bare minimum life support for the colonists. "Assessment?" Lori asked, her voice tight. "Mars colonies are dark but surviving," reported the operations officer. "Minimal life support holding in the emergency shelters." "And the Heralds?" "They appear to be studying the planet, Commander. Their disruption fields are probing the surface, but they haven't attempted to land or directly attack the shelters." Lori exchanged glances with her executive officer. This behavior suggested the Heralds were interested in technology, not necessarily in killing for its own sake. That was valuable information. "Commander," Kate's voice came through the communication channel. "We've analyzed the data from the engagement. There's something you need to know." "Go ahead." "The Herald's disruption field doesn't affect all technology equally. The more advanced the system, the more vulnerable it is. But certain types of technology, particularly analog systems and isolated digital networks with intentional inefficiencies, show significant resistance." "Meaning?" "Meaning, we need to go backwards to go forwards. The chaotic defense matrix was on the right track, but we need to be even more radical. We need to incorporate technologies the Council abandoned millennia ago. Decentralized networks, air-gap systems, even mechanical computers for critical functions." The Zarellian high speaker's voice cut in, the alien leader having been monitoring the exchange. "What you suggest is regression. Dr. Murphy, the Council has spent thousands of years perfecting our technology. And that perfection is now your vulnerability," Kate countered. "These entities exploit the very elegance and efficiency you prize. To defeat them, we need to be messy, redundant, unpredictable." Lori considered this. "How quickly can you develop a revised defense system based on these principles?" "With full Council cooperation, 12 hours. Without it, significantly longer." Lori opened a direct channel to the high speaker. "You've seen the results at Mars. The defense matrix bought us time, but it wasn't enough. We need to implement Dr. Murphy's recommendations, immediately." There was a long pause before the high speaker responded. "The Council has existed for 3,000 years, based on principles of technological advancement and optimization. What you ask is difficult to accept." "More difficult than extinction?" Lori asked bluntly. Another pause. "We will cooperate. Council scientists and engineers are at your disposal. Dr. Murphy." As the communication ended, Lori turned her attention back to the tactical display. The Void Heralds had completed their examination of Mars and were now reorienting toward Earth. "Time to Earth intercept at current velocity?" she asked. 6 hours, Commander," came the grim reply. 6 hours to implement a defense strategy that flew in the face of millennia of technological development. 6 hours to convince the Council to abandon their perfect systems for messy, human solutions. 6 hours to prepare for an enemy that learned and adapted with frightening speed. "Send word to Earth," Lori ordered. "Begin evacuation to the hardened shelters. And signal all ships. We're falling back to Earth orbit. This will be our final stand." As the fleet began its strategic withdrawal, Lori couldn't help but appreciate the irony. Humanity had left the Galactic Council to assert their independence and dignity. Now, the survival of both civilizations might depend on the Council embracing humanity's chaotic, imperfect approach to technology. The galaxy's most advanced civilization would need to take a step backward to move forward, and time was running out. Earth glowed blue and white against the blackness of space, appearing deceptively peaceful despite the frantic preparations taking place on its surface and in orbit. The combined Human Council fleet had formed a defensive sphere around the planet, a last line of defense against the approaching Void Heralds. On the bridge of the Eclipse, Commander Lori Winters studied the tactical display with Lieutenant Maria Rodriguez, who had been recalled from the Intrepid to help coordinate the defense. The revised chaotic matrix has been implemented across 87% of Earth's critical infrastructure, Maria reported. Remaining systems will be converted within the hour. Lori nodded. And the Council ships? Maria's expression showed a mix of frustration and grudging respect. They're trying. Their engineers are struggling with the concept of deliberate inefficiency. It goes against everything they've been taught. They don't have a choice, Lori said firmly. We've seen what happens to optimized systems when the Heralds attack. The Mars incident had been a harsh lesson. While the colony had survived thanks to its primitive backup systems, all advanced infrastructure had been corrupted beyond recovery. The colonists remained in the emergency shelters, dependent on technology that would have been considered obsolete a century ago. The Council flagship is hailing us, announced the communications officer. On screen, the Zarelian high speaker appeared, its crystalline form noticeably dimmer than in previous communications, a sign of stress in its species. Commander Winters, we have implemented your chaotic defense protocols on 60% of our vessels. The process is proving more difficult than anticipated. Difficult but necessary. High speaker, your ships with conventional systems will be vulnerable when the Heralds arrive. We are aware, the alien leader replied, with what might have been resignation. But there is another matter we must discuss. Our long-range sensors have detected additional Void Heralds approaching from the galactic rim, many more than we initially encountered. Lori felt a chill. How many? At least 30 distinct entities, possibly more. They appear to be converging on this sector. This changed everything. Even if Earth survived the initial attack, a force that size could overwhelm any defense. Have you informed the Council? Lori asked. Yes, the Council has voted to implement emergency protocols. All Council worlds are being instructed to abandon advanced technology and revert to pre-contact systems where possible. The significance of this decision wasn't lost on Lori. The Council was abandoning thousands of years of technological development, their primary source of power and identity, based on a human recommendation. There is more, continued the High Speaker. The Council has formally requested that humanity assume strategic command of the combined defense. Your species' experience with technological diversity and adaptive warfare makes you better suited to combat this threat. Lori couldn't hide her surprise. The Council is placing itself under human command? Temporarily, yes. Consider it a recognition of your species' unique qualities. Before Lori could respond, an urgent alert sounded across the bridge. Commander, the Void Heralds have accelerated, reported the tactical officer. New intercept time, 27 minutes. All ships, battle stations, Lori ordered. Implement final defense protocols. She turned back to the High Speaker. We accept command of the combined fleet. All Council vessels are to follow human tactical directives, without question. Is that understood? It is. May your species' adaptability save us all. Commander Winters. As the communication ended, Lori turned to Maria. Status of the prototype? Maria gestured to a secondary display, where a strange device was visible in one of the Eclipse's launch bays. It was an ungainly combination of technology, parts of it sleek and advanced, others deliberately primitive. Dr. Powell's team completed assembly 10 minutes ago. It's untested, but the simulations are promising. The device was humanity's desperate gambit, a reverse evolution bomb designed to force technological regression on anything within its radius. The theory was that if the Void Heralds corrupted advanced technology, perhaps they could be weakened by a field that temporarily disabled advanced systems while leaving simpler ones intact. "Prepare it for deployment," Lori ordered. "We'll need perfect timing." As the crew hurried to comply, Kate Murphy's voice joined the conversation, her face appearing on a secondary display. "I have a theory," she said, her eyes bright with realization. The regression field didn't just affect the Herald's coherence, it changed how they perceived us. "Explain," Lori requested. "If my hypothesis is correct, the Void Heralds don't see individual ships or planets. They perceive technological networks, particularly advanced ones, as invasive entities in their native information space. By regressing our technology, we effectively made ourselves invisible to them." "Like camouflage," Maria suggested. "Exactly," Kate nodded. "They're not retreating because they fear us. They're leaving because, from their perspective, the threat has dissipated." The Zarelian High Speaker's crystalline form pulsed with understanding. "This suggests a long-term solution. If we maintain a technological profile below their threshold of perception, we could coexist," Lori finished. "But that would mean permanently limiting our technological advancement." "Not limiting," Kate corrected. "Diversifying. We don't need to abandon advanced technology entirely. We just need to ensure it never becomes standardized or monolithic. Multiple systems, deliberate incompatibilities, isolated networks. These create a technological ecosystem that's harder for the Heralds to perceive as a single entity." The implications were profound. For millennia, the Council had pursued technological unification and standardization as the pinnacle of advancement. Now, they were confronted with evidence that this approach had created a vulnerability so fundamental it threatened their existence. "The Council will need time to process this paradigm shift," the High Speaker admitted. "As will humanity," Lori acknowledged. "But perhaps this crisis has given both our civilizations something valuable, a new perspective on what true advancement means." As the Eclipse's primary systems gradually came back online, Lori ordered the fleet to maintain a defensive posture around Earth while monitoring the retreating Heralds. The immediate danger had passed, but the galaxy had been fundamentally changed. Humanity had left the Galactic Council seeking independence and respect. In the process, they had inadvertently saved the Council from its own rigid thinking, and perhaps changed the course of galactic civilization forever. 5 years later, Commander Lori Winters, now Admiral Winters, stood in the observation dome of the newly constructed Nexus Station. The massive structure orbited a neutral point between Earth and the nearest Council world, serving as the headquarters for what had once been unimaginable, the Interstellar Cooperative Forum. Gone was the hierarchical amphitheater of the old Council chamber, with its intimidating tiers and central speaking pit. The forum's meeting space was circular, with representatives from all species, including humanity, seated as equals around a table that could expand or contract to accommodate any number of delegates. "Admiring the view?" asked a familiar voice. Lori turned to see Kate Murphy approaching, her former lab coat replaced by the formal attire of Earth's scientific liaison to the forum. The past 5 years had added a few streaks of gray to her hair, but her eyes still sparkled with the same curiosity and intelligence. "Just thinking about how much has changed," Lori replied, gesturing to the bustling activity below. Delegates from dozens of species moved through the chamber, their interactions marked by a collegiality that would have been unthinkable in the old Council. "For the better, I'd say," Kate observed. The Forum's Technological Diversity Initiative has already produced innovations the Council would never have considered. This was perhaps the most remarkable outcome of the crisis. Rather than seeing technological regression as a temporary emergency measure, the former Council races had embraced diversity as a new principle of advancement. Ships now incorporated both quantum computing and mechanical backups. Communication networks used multiple, deliberately incompatible protocols that could function independently. Even architecture had changed, with new structures designed to operate at various technological levels simultaneously. "The Zarelian delegation has arrived," Kate noted, nodding toward a group of crystalline beings entering the chamber. "They've brought their proposal for the Deep Space Monitoring Network." Lori nodded. The network was designed to provide early warning of any return of the Void Heralds, though none had been detected since that pivotal battle 5 years ago. The Zarelians, once the most resistant to human ideas, had become enthusiastic advocates for technological diversity, their crystalline minds adapting to the new paradigm with surprising flexibility. "Admiral Winters," called a voice, and Lori turned to see Ambassador Paul Gregory approaching. Now, Earth's senior representative to the Forum, he carried himself with the confidence of someone whose bold gambit had paid off beyond all expectations. "The opening session begins in 10 minutes. President Hill asked me to ensure you'll be there." "I wouldn't miss it," Lori assured him. As Gregory departed, Kate gave Lori a knowing look. 5 years ago, we were preparing to go it alone. Now we're at the center of a new galactic order. "Not at the center," Lori corrected. "Among equals. That's what we always wanted." A soft chime announced the imminent start of the session. Delegates began making their way to the central chamber, where the Interstellar Cooperative Forum would formally open its 5th year of operation. "Shall we?" Kate asked, gesturing toward the chamber. Lori took one last look at the expanse of stars, visible through the observation dome. Somewhere out there, the Void Heralds continued their mysterious existence in information space, no longer perceiving the diversified technological civilization as a threat to their domain. "Yes," she said, turning away from the view. "Let's help write the next chapter." Together, they walked toward the chamber where representatives of humanity sat as equals among the stars, not because they had conquered or dominated, but because they had demonstrated the strength that comes from embracing diversity and adaptability. The great doors of the Forum, designed to welcome beings of all shapes and sizes, stood open, a symbol of the new era they had helped create. As Lori passed through them, she reflected that sometimes the most important journeys begin with a single, decisive step away from the familiar. Humanity had left the Galactic Council, and everything had indeed collapsed. The old hierarchies, the rigid thinking, the technological monoculture that had dominated for millennia. From that collapse had emerged something stronger, more resilient, and ultimately more advanced than what had come before. It wasn't the ending anyone had expected. It was better. Face appeared on a communication screen. "Commander, we've finished our analysis of the Herald's attack pattern on Mars. There's something you should know." "Go ahead, Doctor." "The Heralds didn't attack randomly. They targeted systems in a specific sequence, always going for the most advanced, most interconnected nodes first. They behaved almost like a technological immune response, attacking what they perceived as the most invasive elements." Lori frowned. "You're suggesting they see our technology as an infection? Or an invasion?" "Yes. Which might explain why they're converging on this sector in such numbers. From their perspective, our technology, especially Council technology, might represent a threat to whatever environment they naturally inhabit." This perspective shift was revealing. If the Void Heralds weren't simply destructive but defensive. "Could we communicate with them?" Lori asked. "Find a way to coexist?" Kate shook her head. "Not with our current understanding. They exist partially in information space. Our conventional communication methods are meaningless to them. It would be like trying to talk to a virus. The tactical officer interrupted. Commander, the Heralds will reach our outer defense perimeter in 15 minutes. Lori made her decision. Deploy the fleet in spiral formation Alpha. Council ships with conventional systems in the outer layers. Vessels with the chaotic matrix closer to Earth. Position the Eclipse at the designated coordinates for the prototype deployment. As the combined fleet moved into position, Lori opened a general channel to all ships. This is Commander Winters to all vessels. We face an enemy unlike any we have encountered before, one that targets the very foundation of our technological civilization. Conventional tactics will fail. Conventional thinking will fail. Our strength lies in our diversity, our redundancy, our willingness to adapt. Follow your assigned protocols. Trust in the chaotic defense matrix. And remember, sometimes, the only way forward is to take a step back. The fleet acknowledged. Human and council ships moving with newfound coordination into the spiral formation. A pattern deliberately designed to appear random and disorganized to the approaching heralds. 5 minutes to contact, announced the tactical officer. Lori took her command seat, her expression resolute. Humanity left the Galactic Council to chart our own course. Today, we chart a course for all sentient life in this galaxy. Let's make it count. As the countdown continued, the Void Heralds became visible to the naked eye, rippling distortions in the fabric of space, advancing with implacable purpose toward the cradle of humanity. The final battle for Earth was about to begin. The first Void Herald breached the outer defense perimeter exactly on schedule, its disruption field immediately affecting the conventional council ships positioned there. Several vessels experienced system failures, their lights flickering as advanced components succumbed to the corruption. But unlike at Mars, these ships didn't go completely dark. Backup systems, hastily installed using human designs, activated, maintaining basic maneuvering and life support. It's working, Maria observed, monitoring the fleet status. The council ships are degrading gracefully, instead of catastrophically failing. Lori nodded, her attention fixed on the tactical display. The Void Heralds were proceeding cautiously, spreading out to surround the fleet in a spherical formation. Their disruption fields pulsed with increasing intensity, probing for weaknesses. The Heralds are focusing on the Council flagship, reported the tactical officer. Disruption field strength increasing by 40%. On the communication screen, the bridge of the Eternal Vigilance appeared chaotic. Lights flickered, and holographic displays wavered in and out of existence. The Zarelian High Speaker's crystalline form vibrated with stress. Our primary systems are failing, the alien leader reported. Switching to human backup protocols. Hold position, Lori instructed. Let them focus on your ship. The more attention they direct there, the less they'll notice our true strategy. The Council flagship was serving as a deliberate distraction, its partially converted systems designed to occupy the Herald's attention, while the Eclipse maneuvered into position for the prototype deployment. Eclipse in position, Commander, announced the navigation officer. Ready for prototype activation. Lori exchanged glances with Maria. This was the moment of truth. Their desperate gambit either worked, or Earth would face the same fate as Mars. Initiate countdown, Lori ordered. All ships, prepare for temporary systems failure. The prototype, officially designated the Technological Regression Field Generator, was designed to create a massive wave of what Kate had termed anti-complexity energy. In theory, it would temporarily disable all advanced technology while leaving simpler systems intact. If the Void Heralds were as dependent on complexity as Kate believed, it might disrupt their coherence long enough for a counterattack. Countdown at 30 seconds, reported the weapons officer. All ships acknowledging. Lori opened a channel to the entire fleet. This is Commander Winters. When the prototype activates, all advanced systems will temporarily fail. Maintain position using backup controls only. Do not attempt to restore primary systems until instructed. The bridge crew worked with focused intensity, monitoring the approaching Void Heralds. The entities had now completely surrounded the fleet, their disruption fields beginning to synchronize into a single, overwhelming pattern of corruption. 10 seconds, announced the weapons officer. Brace for systems failure, Lori ordered, securing herself in her command chair. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, activate. The prototype device ejected from the Eclipse's launch bay, floating serenely in space for a brief moment, before detonating in a silent, expanding sphere of energy, unlike anything humanity had witnessed before. As the wave passed through the fleet, ships went dark, but not completely. Primary systems failed, advanced sensors went offline, quantum computers shut down. But the deliberately primitive backup systems continued to function, keeping life support, basic maneuvering, and simplified weapons operational. On the Eclipse, the bridge plunged into relative darkness, emergency lighting casting everything in a red glow. Analog displays replaced holographic ones. Mechanical controls extended from panels that had previously operated by thought interface. "Status!" Lori called out, her voice steady despite the dramatic transformation of her command center. "Prototype functioning as designed," reported the weapons officer, now reading from a physical gauge. "Regression field expanding at predicted rate." "The Void Heralds?" Lori asked, turning to the backup tactical station where Maria monitored simplified sensor readings. Maria's expression shifted from concentration to surprise. "They're destabilizing, Commander. The regression field is affecting their coherence." On the simplified display, the Void Heralds appeared as distorted blips, their previously synchronized patterns now chaotic and disorganized. Several seemed to be losing their distinctive shape, bleeding into the surrounding space like ink in water. "All ships," Lori ordered through the backup communication system. "Target destabilized heralds with electromagnetic pulse weapons. Fire at will." The combined fleet responded with remarkable coordination. Despite operating on backup systems, both human and Council vessels launched a barrage of EMP weapons at the disoriented heralds. The pulses weren't designed to destroy the entities, but to further disrupt their already compromised coherence. "It's working!" Maria exclaimed. "3 heralds have completely lost cohesion. 2 more are retreating." The tactical display confirmed her assessment. The Void Heralds were breaking formation, some dissolving into unstructured energy, others fleeing toward the outer system. For a moment, victory seemed within grasp. Then, without warning, the remaining heralds synchronized again, but in a different pattern than before. Their disruption fields shifted to a new frequency, one that began to counteract the regression field. "They're adapting," Maria warned. "The regression field is losing effectiveness." Lori made a swift decision. "All ships with operational weapons, concentrate fire on the central herald, the one coordinating the others." The fleet responded, focusing all available firepower on a single entity. For several tense moments, the herald withstood the assault, its disruption field fluctuating but holding. Then, a Council vessel, operating on human backup systems, maneuvered directly into the herald's path and detonated its power core in a sacrificial attack. The explosion temporarily disrupted the herald's coherence, creating a cascading failure that spread to the connected entities. One by one, the Void Heralds lost their structured form, dissolving into formless energy that dissipated into the surrounding space. "All heralds in the immediate vicinity have been neutralized," reported Maria, her voice reflecting disbelief at their success. A ragged cheer went up from the bridge crew, quickly tempered by the knowledge that this was only the first wave. Many more heralds were approaching from the galactic rim. "Damage assessment," Lori ordered, keeping the crew focused. "The fleet suffered approximately 30% casualties," reported the operations officer. "The Council flagship is intact but severely damaged. Earth's defense systems are functioning on backup protocols." "And the regression field?" "Dissipating as designed. Commander, Primary systems should begin to restart within the hour. Lori nodded, allowing herself a moment of relief before addressing the next challenge. Signal all ships, maintain defensive formation, and open a channel to the Council flagship. The communication system crackled to life, displaying a darkened bridge similar to the Eclipse's. The Zarelian high speaker was barely visible, its crystalline form dimmed to a faint glow. "Commander Winters," the alien leader acknowledged. "It appears your primitive approach was successful." "For now," Lori cautioned. "But more heralds are coming. We need to extend this defense to all Council worlds immediately." "Agreed. I have already transmitted the specifications for your regression technology and chaotic defense matrix to the Council. Emergency protocols are being implemented across all Council space." This was unprecedented. The mighty Galactic Council, with its millennia of technological superiority, now rapidly adopting human-designed systems based on deliberate inefficiency and technological regression. "There is another matter to discuss, Commander," the High Speaker continued. "The Council has convened an emergency session to address the political implications of recent events." "Political implications?" Lori asked, though she suspected what was coming. "Yes. The Council's structure has been based on technological advancement and standardization for 3,000 years. Recent events have demonstrated the fundamental flaw in this approach." The crystalline being seemed to hesitate before continuing. "The Council proposes a new governing structure, one that values diversity and adaptation alongside stability and advancement." "And humanity's place in this new structure?" "As equals, Commander Winters. Perhaps even as leaders in certain domains. Your species has demonstrated qualities the Council has long undervalued." Lori couldn't help but smile at the irony. So humanity left the Council, and everything collapsed, including the Council's assumptions about what makes a civilization advanced. "An apt summary," agreed the High Speaker, with what might have been humor. "The question now is, will humanity help us rebuild something better?" Before Lori could respond, an alert sounded from the tactical station. "Commander," Maria called out, her tone urgent. "The approaching heralds, they've changed course." "Toward Earth?" Lori asked, immediately on alert. "No, they're dispersing, moving away from Council space entirely." The tactical display confirmed this unexpected development. The second wave of Void Heralds, far larger than the first, was indeed changing direction, moving away from the concentration of technological civilization. "They're retreating," the High Speaker observed. "But why?"